Yes. Oh gosh. St. Luke's Gospel. I'd have to look it up. I wish I knew the scriptures by memory. One day, give me a chance. Son. She says, son, do you not know? Do you not realize? And he just says, well, did you not know I have to be about my daddy's business? My father's business? He had to come back for everything. Smart little boy. 12-year-old.
Well, they had natural relationships.
Yes.
Just because it's not recorded in the scripture.
That is correct. Father Sam just reminded me that they had a normal relationship like any other family. That's why St. Mark doesn't even have a birth narrative. It's only St. Matthew and St. Luke. John does not have a birth narrative. So they presume that we would know. He had to be born. And then where are all those years from the time he got lost in the temple to the time he gets the active ministry? Where are all those years? Well, they expect you to know that he went to school, that he had to go to rabbinical class, that he got the mumps, got the flu, and everything that goes with it. They didn't have to record that because they presume that we're going to know. Jesus grew up in a normal way. They were not written. A lot of things are not written. Correct. He called Joseph Abba. That was the thing to do. Joseph was his Abba. Until we get to the Our Father, and he refers to God as Abba, which was absolutely never, it was unheard of to call God Abba. And I've heard many Jewish little children call their daddies Abba. That's what they call them. Right? We have our terms at home, they have theirs. Third word, John 19:28. I am thirsty. That was not rehearsed, by the way. I am thirsty. It's a human condition, and all of us can plug in. You know what that means? It's much like Mother Earth. 3/4 of the earth are water. And I Googled it, by the way. About 3/4 of our body is water. Remember water retention? I saw a joke the other day where this man is on the scale and his doctor tells him that's not water retention, that's food retention. That you suffer from. Without water we die. With too much water we die. So there's got to be a balance. And most of us are aware that you're supposed to drink between 6 and 8 glasses a day. I never have any problems. I really like water. My mother hates water. She's got to force herself. But some of us have problems, some of us don't. Well, Jesus was on the other end of the spectrum because he had lost a lot of blood. He was being killed. And when you have that much loss of body liquids, you're going to be thirsty. But there's much more to this word than meets the eye, so we cannot take it at surface level, for sure, for sure. Think back to the temptation of Jesus in the desert. That was the first Sunday of Lent. Can you remember back that far? We had the temptation of Jesus. So we have it in the 3 synoptic Gospels. In Matthew, it's Matthew 4, 1 through 11. Mark, it's Mark 1, 12 through 13. And Luke is chapter 4, 1 through 13. So Mark only has 2 verses, or one figures that you know that there was temptation there. Remember, Mark is the first gospel, the oldest gospel, and also the shortest. He got it done. And then Luke and Matthew kind of copycat St. Mark, and they add according to their communities and what they had to teach in those communities. Both Matthew and Luke describe the temptations. And it would be very naive, that's the word I use here, but it would be very stupid for us to think that the temptations listed on the Gospels are the only temptations that Jesus had. No? Faces probably came to mind of everybody who had hurt him, starting from his childhood, people that might have owed him money, all sorts of temptations. Sin is always in relationship, remember? Sin is always about people, not a chair or a carpet or a kneeler. I'll get you if you hurt the kneelers, but it's not a sin. Well, you'll be hurting the kneeler. Anyway. The devil hit Jesus with everything he had in order to get him to renounce his humanity. That was the motive. That was the reason for the temptations. To get Jesus to not be human. Got it? Is that clear? That's very important. To get Jesus to try and not be human. Gotta kind of underscore that. That was his goal. To get Jesus to pull rank, to show his divinity, to be Superman. A little hocus pocus. Remember where that word comes from? Hocus pocus? You don't remember? From the Latin Mass. From the Tridentine Mass. Hoc agnus corpus meum. This is my body. And when the people would hear the hocus, because he would say, really pronounce those words, hoc est eum corpus meum, hoc est eum calicem meum, and they say, oh, hocus pocus. It was like magic. That's what I'm telling you the truth. No charge. No charge. So the devil was trying to get Jesus to do some hocus pocus. Magic. To turn the stone into bread, to fly off the temple, to assume power over the kingdoms. And remember, those are just like summaries. The temptations might not sound like much, but neither does eating a little bit of forbidden fruit. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Was it an apple? Or a pear? It was an avocado. What was it? And the scripture doesn't say. Only in the movies we see an apple, but it doesn't say. It just says forbidden fruit, the tree of good and evil. Whatever fruit was growing there was appealing, pleasant to the eye, and a temptation to our ancestors. And it was to get us away from God's original plan. You go back to Genesis chapter 3. It's all outlined there for you, nice and neatly, step by step. If you eat of this fruit, what did the devil say to Eve? If you eat of the forbidden tree, you're going to what? You're going to be like God. Your eyes will be open. You're going to be like God. They were already like God. Tontos. They were already like God. Because if you go to chapter 1, you see that they were made in God's image and likeness. But usually, like 99% of us don't like what we see in the mirror. I don't know why. Especially if you have a full length and you stand naked. It gets sadder all the time. It gets sadder start all the time. They're kind of disgusting. What doesn't fall off starts to droop. That's the cycle of life. And so we usually have some complaints. If we could just tell God how we would have liked to be. And there are the lists or pictures of what is most beautiful in our society. No? Mom and I were watching old movies the other day, Cantinflas. We laughed. But here, once in a while, in the middle of the movie, there's a nice, beautiful dance or whatever. And these stars in those old days. Some of these movies are from the 30s and the 40s. And the women were chubby. They were all chubby. And that was considered pretty. Back then, guess you had to have something to hold, or whatever. And now, what's the ideal? You know? Twiggy. We have all these girls going into these problems with the eating disorders in order not to gain any weight. So, I don't know. A little bit of meat on the bones doesn't hurt anybody. But our definition changes of what is beautiful. How did I get into that? About the devil's plan. God's original plan was to share everlasting life with humans, and the devil doesn't like that plan. Therefore, he tries to make us fall away from humanity, away from what God originally intended. So human nature comes with limitations. That's just a fact. That's why we say nobody's perfect. Only God is perfect. All of us live somehow, some way. We get tired, we get hungry, and we get thirsty. From the beginning, Satan presents an illusion, and you just heard me say, be like God, don't be yourself, be something else. So he did the same trick with Jesus in the desert. If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread. Don't have limitations. And after 40 days in the desert of fasting, praying, Jesus was hungry. After walking with his cross and being nailed to it, he was thirsty. That's why the Passion narrative, the voice of the devil manifests itself in the voice of the people, the voice of the thief, the voice of the soldiers. If you are the Son of God, save yourself. And notice that conditional word is it's a very tricky word. If only, Lord, if only, it's a favorite of the devil. If I were a rich man, if only I were younger, if I knew then what I know now. There's a lot of ifs that we use all the time. What about reality? Because that's all we have, and we just have this moment. Hard to appreciate if we're always ifing ourselves. But Jesus came to show us how to be human, how to get back on track, back to the garden, which is why he did not give in to temptation. He said no to the devil. And he said yes to being ordinary, a human being with limitations. He preferred thirst to doing any hocus pocus. He could have. He could have. So the limitations became more evident on the cross because he had pain and suffering and thirst. Remember this one? I was thirsty and you gave me the drink. Where's that from? Matthew's Gospel is the only one that has that. Not the other synoptics. Matthew's Gospel. Remember when Jesus was talking about the last judgment? That's Matthew 25, I don't like it. Because who is the least among us? Who's the least? That's everybody. It could be the person sitting right next to you. Your neighbor. Maybe the one you had a fight with. The least. Your son's teacher who doesn't agree with you. And there are a lot of least people around